Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special episode of our show. Within the past decade or so, we have seen the rise of something called the ARG. Unless you've been living under a rock and have not had internet access for at least the past 5 years, then you probably already know what an ARG is. But for those of you late to the party, let me explain. ARG stands for Alternate Reality Game. Similar to most role-playing games or even scavenger hunts, the players are usually presented with a number of clues and puzzles that must be followed and solved in order to find more clues that eventually lead to some end goal. More often than not, they are usually fictional murder mystery-based conspiracies and often have a hint of supernatural thrown in, but this doesn't always have to be so. Sometimes bits of real history will be thrown in to give the story more authenticity. In the end, the goal is to have the players or spectators experience something that feels real on many levels, especially on an emotional one. The difference between an ARG and an RPG is that usually with an RPG, you'll have a game master, or these days a computer that will set up a scenario in which the players, using fictional characters, will problem solve their way out of dangerous situations set before them. This all happens in the safety of the players' minds, whether the game be on a tabletop or on a video game screen. The game can be saved and played again when the players are ready. The ARG, however, takes place in real time and uses elements from the real world to help drive a narrative, and seemingly twists reality in a way that should keep the people participating wondering how much of it is real. The story is revealed more and more as the players unravel clues spread across a number of media outlets, usually on the internet, but clues have also been found in newspapers and even banned t-shirts and movie posters. The Beast in 2001 was created by Warner Brothers and had clues in the promotions for the movie AI. It was to set the stage for a series of video games by Microsoft over the next 5 years. 9 Inch Nails created an ARG back in 2007 to promote Year Zero, a concept album loosely influenced by George Orwell's 1984. I Am Trying to Believe.com was found when a photographer noticed random letters were in bold print on the back of an NIN European Tour shirt. Furthermore, I'd like to suggest that the Beatles, though not knowing that we would call it ARG today, ran one when a newspaper accidentally reported to the public that Paul McCartney had been fatally wounded in an auto accident. Upon hearing the news, the Beatles chuckled and decided to run with it. They began spurring on rumors with cryptic lyrics, backmasking, and hidden messages on their album covers. To this day, people still toy with the thought that some lookalike brought us hits like Band on the Run and Live and Let Die. Again, this was done to drum up excitement and boost their sales, and why not? There's nothing wrong with that. Now, I've watched videos where college professors have used ARG to inspire students to think outside of the box when it comes to problem solving and practicality. I found out about all this when I first found out about ARGs. That's been about 4 years ago, and since then it's grown like wildfire. When I first researched the subject, that's all I could find. Now we have every other edgy teen trying to be the next Orson Welles, and there's nothing wrong with that. All that being said, ARG seems to have its roots in advertisement, which means there's money involved. Here we begin to approach the paradox that has risen and threatens to destroy everything if somebody doesn't stand up and say something quick. First, we have to ask ourselves, who likes ARG? and why? Well, I like ARG, and I'm pretty sure that most of you that are watching this like it too, or else you wouldn't have joined us this evening. But every now and then, doesn't it seem like there's a lull, where we kind of feel embarrassed for liking it? All of a sudden, this big name or that big name in a certain genre of analysis announce their unfavorable opinion about it that week. All the sheep come running to instill the opinion to the rest of the general public. And then a very well-made series comes out, and popular opinion sways the other direction once again. And there's nothing wrong with that. The main thing I wanted to talk about is something that has now sprung from all of that. There's them, the ones with the money, and have the means to produce quality content with the aim of making money in order to further the cause. Then there's us, the common YouTuber horror fan. We have a love for the horror and the macabre of it all, but we have little money and little intention to profit, but we want to create. It drives some of us half mad at the thought, and we go scampering off to try to cobble something together out of nothing, in hopes of emanating something cool we've seen before, or maybe something we see gives us an idea, and we want to see if we can make this idea come to light. Art begets art. Most of us do it for fun and the sheer love of the art. So then we get to the metagamer. I don't know what else to call it right now. The term metagaming is to take inside information and to use it for your advantage, to cheat. This is possible within the RPG community. You know that Kobold has 3 hit points, but your character doesn't know that. But that can't necessarily be done in the ARG community. I only call this person a metagamer or possibly meta player because they seem to have their own characters running their own channels that seem to tell their own stories. But at the same time, they acknowledge the greater community and also follow along with and participate in other ARGs, sometimes borrowing ideas in hopes of being granted a crossover, and there's nothing wrong with that. It only furthers the original creator's mythos and notoriety, as well as making a true fan feel welcomed and appreciated. ARG is still a relatively new thing, so the etiquette in which a player must conduct themselves while playing the game is still a bit hazy. While some might call projecting one's own history into somebody else's background game jacking, others may call it role-playing. And I personally don't see anything wrong with that as long as you're not stealing someone else's video and calling it your own. That's called plagiarism. I wanted to bring this topic up because some of the channels I'd like to discuss in the next few episodes fall into this category. Some of their storylines are molded by the community that they interact with and the public figures that influence their community. Now I know that some of you, hopefully not a lot of you, will disagree with me on many points, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is just my opinion at this moment. Right now, I'd like to take the time to dedicate this episode to Granny Monster, Pet Monster, and Monster Chick and their doctrine of create, not hate. When running a web series or ARG, it is important to have conflict. That is what drives the story. Sometimes that may involve the willing participation of another channel or the creation of another channel, as in the case of the last ARG I covered, 01A51CD0. What could look like war may be all just for show. To me, what create, not hate means is don't be a troll. Don't go trash talking. That's not real, because everybody knows that it's not. It's called maintaining suspension of disbelief. And try not to look down on the fellow fan of whatever ARG you're following at the time, because their origin story may be fan-fictional. You never know. They might have some fun ideas of their own spin-offs, and why not? There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have to be a Grinch, if you gotta be that one guy, well, that's okay too. I suppose you're creating in your own way, and for that I applaud you. But when the time comes, I hope the ones watching will be as kind to you.